And good evening. I'm your host, Stan Deyo, and this is for the first week of November, in particular on the Thursday, the 6th of November, 2025. Now, if you have the ability to record this video as you're watching it, please do so or download it from StreamYard or from Rumble. This is going to be a very important document that I want you to spread far and wide so that the secret of antigravity is not lost. Because the secret of antigravity is going to allow humans to go faster than the speed of light, to warp space, to generate energy from interacting with a field coil to the gravitational field of wherever you are to make electricity. It'll allow us to power cars, aircraft, spaceships, that kind of stuff. And you don't have to bring, fuel and stuff because you can get it from the gravitational field that you're traveling in. A rather important document, and I've known about this in stages for the last 60 years. Now, I know there have been rumors about, in the fringe elements of our society about watchers from space watching over humanity and guiding humanity, but they're not rumors. They're true. And this happened to me over a period of time until I realized what was happening. They're very subtle and they're individuals you come in contact with in life, and they supply a missing part of the puzzle that you're here to solve. And my puzzle to solve was the antigravity and the behavior of space, how it all works and how parallel universes work and that kind of stuff. So I go back to, oh gosh, when I was in junior high school, I was in one of my math classes, and you know, fairly advanced mathematician. People thought I was pretty special, but at that age, you're just a kid. And I remember one day my math teacher there, he said to me, "Look, come to me after class. I want to talk to you." And so I came, and all he did was, "Oh yeah," he said. I just wanted to encourage you, boy. He says, follow your inclinations in mathematics, and pay close attention because you deserve to do so. And I thought, oh, okay, funny thing. I thought we were going to get some extra credit studies or something. Anyway, so I left, and years passed. Had been in 16. Well, I went to the Air Force Academy, but that's another story. Yeah, Air Force Academy is the shield here. My prop and wings from there is here. Anyway, after I came back from the academy and had served with the Strategic Air Command in the reserve unit there at Carswell Air Force Base in Texas, in Fort Worth, I went into the computer industry. And one night, I was in my apartment in Dallas, and I had contracted some sort of a virus or bacteria that caused great pain in every joint in my body. And I'd gone to the hospital that evening, and they'd give me an experimental antibiotic at the time, which was uh, oh, uh, acromycin 4, I think it was. Anyway, and I took the tablets, and the shot. Came back home, was laying in the bed, and I had an out of body experience. Went out there somewhere, and I can tell you this in another video. I have talked about it before, but while I was out there, I asked the voice that was behind my right ear. I said, I was looking at space and everything. And I said, "How does all of this work?" And boy, that's a simple question that had a big answer. Um, I was shown many things at that time when I was out of my body, but when I squeezed back into my body, these memories kind of dropped over the side, like it was my body was a shoe that was too small for, the foot, which was all the knowledge. And after I woke up and started thinking about things, I started researching, the Philadelphia experiment, the field coils, how they work. And over the next, oh gosh, 20 years or so, I started waking up in the early morning hours, about 4 or 5, from a dream vision, which would be showing me, how a saucer craft worked or how the stars were formed and, the physics of it all. And so the things that I couldn't remember directly as soon as I came back to my body were gradually being pumped into my memory. I understand why now, but that was the way it was happening. And I was working the computer field, as I told you, and so I lived out in the suburbs in Mesquite, and I built a laboratory there in my home that wife and I shared at the time. And the the lab I had there, I was wiring a kind of a conical coil that, you know, the wires went down and out and over a bit, and then into the center and back up and down and out. It formed this kind of loopy coil, a right angle toroidal coil, but half of it. Anyway, I put that over my work area in the desk, and I had a signal generator, a pulse generator to generate pulses of electricity that's direct current. And I hooked this up to the coil, and I fired it up, and something happened. I could see the light from the wall ahead of me and from my desk and everything sucked in toward the coil, including me. Felt like I got sucked in like that. And then the coil burned out, and everything returned to normal. Wow, I was, pretty interested in all that. So I took that knowledge to me when I was at work over the next few weeks. And I had an office in a large corporate company. It had like 100 subsidiary companies. But anyway, I was up on their top floor in charge of systems and programming for their computer system. In my office, it was a private office. I had a blackboard that swiveled. So on one side of it, I would put my work routine for, the job there. And then at the end of the day, I'd flip it over and I would work on my theories and the equations for the coils to make them work properly. Well, one day, one of my programmers that I'd hired, an older gentleman, older than me, came in and saw that, and he says, "So what are you doing?" And I told him it's just this coil thing for gravity. And he said, "That's funny." He said, "Before I retired from the Air Force, I was a strategic air command, aircraft commander." And oh, that's great, And he said, "I had a navigator on my craft that came to me one day with a sealed envelope, and been marked so as you could see it had been opened, and then another envelope which had what was in the sealed envelope." And he said, uh, "George," he says, "I'm going to have you keep this copy for safekeeping, and I'm going to file the other at the patent office." And he says, George says, "Okay, fine, thank you, I'll do that." And the navigator went on about his business. And George said, "I opened it up, and it was drawings, patent drawings showing this set of coils." And the navigator told him what happened when he used it, but the coils were like around washers, and around a rod in the center. And I said, "So there was a coil around each washer, and there was a coil around the vertical coil in the front. You're in the middle of it." "Yeah," he says. Well, that explanation, piqued my interest for sure. And when the navigator told George about how he'd, you know, built, well, let me just show you here. Let me just pause a second, and I'll get that up there for you. Okay, let's see here. Let's grab this coil, share screen, and here we are. Let's go for that one. Okay, now this is what the navigator told George, and then gave him the patent for it, or to keep in case something happened to him, the navigator. Um, and as you can see here, it's iron washers that got a cut out of them, and the coil wrapped around them, and then this vertical coil here. Well, now George had lost the original piece of paper in his travels. His parents in Florida had lost them when they moved, so I couldn't see the actual drawing, and I had reconstructed it from what George told me. And I only put one turn of coil around this ring here. And it was going to be years before I corrected this mistake. I will get to that. But so for years, I tried experiments with a single toroidal coil and a single vertical coil, like one of these would be here. Let's just look at this here a little bit closer. And you'll see here that it's just a ordinary coil wrapped around. There was no right angle business other than, the right angle of this field to this complex coil. Now, okay, that Let's just call that back down here like that. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Did you get to see that? You probably didn't. Yeah. Okay. Let me do it again this way. Add a stage and uh, yeah. the the system doesn't work to produce antigravity if you don't have three coils at right angles to each other. Anyway, that's now I'm going to go back up a bit here. When I was much younger, uh, oh, 60 years younger, when I had that out of body experience and asked how things work, one of the things I was interested in at that time was the story about the USS Eldridge and the Philadelphia experiment. Now, I started researching that. I asked the Navy to send me the schematics of the Eldridge so I could see, how it was structured, and then for their degaussing ships, how they were built with coils, three sets of coils to neutralize the magnetic signature of the Eldridge. Say if they put it on that, so that magnetic mines nearby would not see them as a new entry into the magnetic field and then explode. Now, I um, I was intrigued by this, and I noticed that in the Eldridge, they had um, three coils. They had coils that went like this, parallel to the water, and then coil through the ship that went vertical to the water, and then one at right angles around those two. In fact, let me just get that up for you here. Let's see. That would be. We'll get rid of that one. We'll go over here to the Photoshop thing again. Where's Photoshop, folks? Uh, uh, Let me just see. Let me just turn it up here and see where it is here. Okay. All right. That's it. That's the one we want. Okay. Now, hopefully you can see this. Okay. Now that's Photoshop. And in Photoshop, I have a diagram of how the field coils for the Eldridge worked. Um, the red field coil went to the length of the ship, but at right angles to the ocean. And the second one was a blue one here. It went parallel to the surface of the sea. And the third was a vertical coil, which went at right angles to each of these. So you can see conceptually, three fields at right angles would do this. Now, I don't know how I missed this, but I looked at this and I thought, okay, I'll build a vertical coil as that one. I'll build one toroidal coil like this, and that'll take care of it. And all that did, of course, was cause problems. Let me just remove that from there and put me back up. Um, because I envisioned the navigator's coils to be one coil around a washer and one coil around that vertical rod, I didn't complete the three circuits that were necessary to make the Eldridge disappear. And it was years later when I started digging back into Eldridge while I was working on the anti-gravity. So I thought, holy cow, I've left out something. And so I was then trying to figure out how you would wrap a right angle coil to those two coils. And, doing it in my mind, I still drew a blank. And I started lecturing down in Australia after I left Dr. Teller's program on antigravity, and I was telling people about a great deception coming using flying saucers and antigravity that humans had done and other beings that came from a parallel universe. And so I was giving these lectures over in Brisbane, and really long, tiring lectures. And I lectured all day, and then it was the end of the day. It was night, and behind stage, I was answering questions for people that formed a long line who wanted to ask me questions about the lecture and things. And I noticed there was this guy at the end of the line. He was a small fellow, like a gypsy-sized person. Anyway, and he was carrying a paper sack with him like this with a handle, and he kept moving to the end of the line. As someone would get into the line, he'd move behind him so he would be the last person in the line. And I had already had trouble with hecklers out in the audience, and the premier, or the governor of Queensland, had sent me a bodyguard or two to get rid of hecklers, and they were already gone now because it was over. And so I was thinking, is this guy going to be stabbing me or shooting me with something in that bag? And so I watched him, and finally he was the last one. Everyone else had left. And I said, "Well, can I help you?" And he said, "Oh, I think I can help you." And I said, "Okay." And he reached in the bag, and I got ready to tackle him if there was something, a weapon. And he pulls out this stack of papers like this, like A4 type papers. And they were, photocopies of various news stories about me. Now, I hadn't written the Cosmic Conspiracy book and hadn't done TV or anything at that time, just been doing private lectures to church groups. And he had lectures or articles on me from Europe and various magazines and stuff. I'd never given the interviews, and he had things about me from various sources that were written down, typed down, whatever, that I have no idea where they came from or who did them. Excuse me. So he he said, "Now there's something else I want to show you." He says, "We thought it was time you saw this." And I said, "We?" He says, "Look at these Polaroid photographs." And he pulls out two from the sack, and they are photographs taken inside of an assembly area, like one of these great metal barns, that you build aircraft in or make an aircraft hangar out of. And in there were several uh, 30 to 50-foot diameter craft, magnetic craft, saucer craft, being put together. And one of the photographs showed me a close up of how the coils were wrapped around the core and the vertical part. And I looked at it. I said, "Gee, that's incredible." And I tried to memorize every detail, which I later wrote down in drawings and whatever. But I said, "I don't suppose you could leave me a copy of this or something, or let me have one of those." And he says, "Nope, put it in the bag like that, turn around and rushed out the door." And I stopped for a minute and I thought, and I yelled out to see if anybody was down under the stage. I said, "Look, come here and help me with this. This guy has some information, just ran out the building. Let's get him." So I ran out the door after him after I paused to yell at the guys, opened the door, stage door, went out, and I just saw him climbing into a black limousine in the back of it, and off he drove. I was never able to find the man. But then for years, then I remembered and studied the drawing he had, because when I worked with Teller's anti-gravity program, I was working first with plasma craft in my development, and then was going to go to their craft, which they'd already built and tested. And so I had not seen at the Teller project what the whole craft looked like. But this guy was showing me that. And I thought, okay, well, who are they who wanted me to see this? Thought I should see this now. And so I looked at it, and I drew pictures of it. In fact, let me just pull up some of the sketches I drew of this. It's important, actually. Now, okay, let's throw this up there. Get my photo over there. Uh, Now, I was reminded here while I was doing that, back at the Air Force Academy in 62 to 64 when I was there. In the last year that I was there, I had a mathematics teacher, a German fellow, and in his class, I proved myself to be, a super math student. Not to brag, but I was really at a genius level mathematics. And so one Sunday afternoon, he came to my squadron area there in the 22nd Squadron. He checked me out, which, to come with him to visit and go for a drive. And took, he drove me up. Actually, in this picture, he drove me up somewhere up in here, up on a ledge, an outcropping that there was a parking space on it, looked down over the academy. And I remember, thinking, boy, this is weird. It's nice to get out and as a fourth classman to have a bit of time out like this. And he told me, now, boy, he says, there's a group of us that and I said, excuse me, sir, do you mean like a club or something? What are you talking about? And he said, well, and then he said, that'll be enough for today. And I realized that several minutes, I didn't know how long had passed because I was in a different position to him with, my hands were in a different place on the dash and stuff. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And apparently what had happened unknown to me was he told me something about this group of them that he wanted me to know, but not to know consciously. I'd been hypnotized. And so I kind of wrote it off as, oh, it's one of those things that doing strange tricks with the Theater Academy and forgot about it. But he was a watcher. And he was one of this group of watchers that were watching me. And it took me till later in life till I realized these little disconnected events, all toward antigravity and flight and whatever, were they were from a group trying to steer me along the path to developing antigravity, which is cool. I mean, I appreciate the help, but as time passed, I realized these people knew what they were doing, knew about the antigravity, how it worked, and I started to wonder, are these guys even human? I mean, they looked like it, but anyway, it was an interesting time. And as time went on, from the drawings that I showed you there, about the photos that the gypsy kind of guy gave me, he was another watcher. And there were watchers after watchers as I started to look at my life. Years after that, still in Australia, I was helped by an individual that has been part of a security team that we had at the Teller Project. And he was working there in Perth, Western Australia. And he made himself known to me through a mutual friend. And he said, by that time, I'd written a book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, and had a flying saucer picture on the front. And he'd seen it on the desk of my friend. And he told my friend, I'd like to talk to that guy. And so I took my friend and we went over to see this guy at his place of business. And he had a room. I'm trying not to identify him completely because he told me the things I'm going to tell you about. But he said, if you ever tell anybody who I am that I've said these things, I will kill you and your family. And he was one of the type of guys that you believed what he said in the manner he said it. Anyway, I said, okay, we agree. And so my friend Kim and I sat in this, uh, well, it's like a skiff, but it was a room that was sealed so that no bugging could be done. And you couldn't hear outside of the walls of the glass in the door. So that it was in the middle of his place of business. So we sat down and he identified himself as a leader of that security team. And I said, yeah, right. And I heard about how they had these. I'd seen these things, but not in operation. These handheld stun guns that you didn't have to touch anybody with them. You just shot, and it had like a Muslim, not a Muslim, muslin, like a cloth across the opening of this round opening of this gun. And they'd charge it up by plugging it into the wall. And then when they wanted to use it, they could shoot it at somebody or something. And an invisible electric donut would go shooting out of it and would paralyze whatever it hit for a time. And, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And he says, now, I see you've got your drawings here. You got any questions for me about the project? I said, well, I never got over into the assembly area, but I did see these things that a guy showed to me a few years back here at a lecture. And he says, oh, yeah. He says, well, let me see him. And just, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. And he says, we also had another cage up the top so that we could uh, protect the crew from changes to the field, and they were in the field then, and it made time pass at different rates for us in the center of the craft and those outside. And he filled me in on a lot of the technical details of these 30 to 50-foot diameter electric flying saucers. And we discussed wires, insulation materials, titanium dioxide, all kinds of stuff. And every question I could think of to ask him that I hadn't, been able to get back at Teller Project because I was in my own little cubicle, he answered these questions for me, and uh, I thanked him for that and made the drawings. And he says, "Now forget me, forget my name, where I am, or else." And I said, "Okay, I understand." And my friend Kim and I left. And as far as I know, we've both kept his name and occupation secret to this day. And so we just call him the navigator, you know, because he was using the navigator type coils and telling us about it from his security position. Anyway, it was, he was a watcher. He contacted me and showed me these things and corrected certain things in my drawings. But he didn't tell me that I was missing a coil. And perhaps that was a bit of insurance for him that I wouldn't be able to build this, and then people start looking where I got the information. Anyway, I thanked him, and Kim thanked him, and time passed. And there were a couple of other instances where a quote unquote watcher would correct my situation or my drawings and concepts of how it all worked. Well, a few years passed, and I've moved back here to the States, and periodically I've been playing with the air version of a saucer craft. And then, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, I started thinking about the Philadelphia experiment and the coil design I had for toroidal coils. Holy cow, I suddenly realized I only had two coils and I did not have a third one like the Philadelphia experiment had. And I realized it has to be another toroidal coil going in the opposite direction and at right angles every place to the other coil. And these two had to be at right angles to the vertical one. It all fit in. And I suddenly realized, boy, have I wasted a lot of time. Now, I have collected a few people out there across the world who are trying to run experiments for me and building test coils and things. Some in California, some Australia. So, they're all over the place. And these are eager beavers to try to build the first anti-gravity coil that they could. And so I had been misleading them all because I hadn't been giving them the third coil. So I've now corrected that and been sending out notices to them for our next meeting, a design meeting, to say, look, we've got to include a third coil at right angles to the other one on the toroid. And now the ring bearer's job, of the ring that binds them all, is getting very, very close to the secret. And we're going to be building these shortly in the next few weeks as we get the materials in that we need to finish the job. But this is going to be the secret of anti-gravity. Now, these pulse coils I've told you about, you pulse through a diode into these connected coils. I think I showed you that, but it wouldn't hurt to show you that again. Let me just get over to the one here. I think this is the one I want to go to. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There's that. Okay. Here's the right angle coils, as you can see. And here's the navigator's coils, which I drew up, but I had only one coil, so we were not making it do well. Now that these are corrected, um, we'll be building them, and hopefully we'll be able to share that with you very shortly. Yeah, right. It'd be nice for you to be able to see it, wouldn't it? Okay, where I was talking about was these coils here. And we've now done experiments with types of wires that are round and flat. The flat ones are too hard to bend around small coils that we're building. So we use a round wire. Now, the square section to this made it easier for us to wrap a round wire around like this and space it at 45-degree angles in each face, like I showed you, because it could grip on this right angle or this square section. It wouldn't slide so much as it would on a smooth donut shape. And they're hollow because heat builds up in here because I'm going to, in building this, what we're doing is tanking a lot of pulses of direct current. And we tank a field, we store it over a few minutes, and it takes up a huge field around the core, the craft, and it's spinning. It's a vortex that is wrapping around like that. Um, and so that's why we had to have a hollow core for cooling as well. Let's see if I've forgotten anything else on that. I doubt it. That's pretty much it. Oh, and here at the doorway here, where there's a bite in the core, I noticed that they had wrapped, insulation around those flat wires and built an archway over to the other side because they had to have this area open for the core magnetic field to what they call breathe, for the magnetic field to get out of the torus and breathe and move around, interact with the other coils. I'll probably think of some other things and amend this later. But the secret that we're talking about is it's our joining um, the race of warp cultures in the universe. I know it sounds very Star Trekky and all that kind of junk, but when you think about it, with antigravity, we can open up space, travel through the medium of space at great speeds, much greater than the speed of light, because we're not bound by the inertia of hitting the particles of space in the ether space. This allows us to throw out a field ahead of the craft, bend it around and back into the entry to the torus coil, and do this breaststroking at high speed through space. And in doing so, we generate a field way out ahead of the craft that is curling back around like this. And so what it does is as we pass small meteors and things like that, we don't even have to steer around them because this field hits them and throws them around and behind us and puts them back virtually where they were when we passed through them. So it's a way that we have shields by the field itself. Star Trek had metal plates or whatever, but this field is our shield. And you can have it static or you can have it moving. You can balance it where you have a shield of the energy traveling forward of the craft and back into the intakes and doing this. Anyway, um, it's doing this, telling you these things and having you photocopy or make hard prints of what you're seeing in these drawings. I am releasing this secret to the general public instead of having it locked away with the controllers of this planet at the moment. This is meant for all of us to know and share and be able to use and develop other technologies based on it. I mean, it's just, you know, anti-gravity powered cars, anti-gravity, spaceships, planes, submarines, everything that uses energy can use toroidal, gravitic fields. So I don't want this to get lost. I'm getting old now and I'm in my 81st year, so I'm tired. But I want this knowledge, this information to be out there in the public for you to be able to develop other things. I don't want it to get locked away. I have told you in the past about the technology at the Teller Group, how it's being suppressed for, gosh, 60, 70 years. I know that they started building their own versions of anti-gravity at the Teller Group in the mid 60s, early to mid 60s. And they've been developing stuff and preventing the rest of us to share information. Now, I don't know what happened to the navigator, but I talked to George, his aircraft commander, and the navigator guy He never heard from him again. He was transferred out 2 weeks later and never heard from him again. And I know that there was one other guy like me at the Teller Group that they let go of. They destroyed all of our records there and turned us loose. He went over to Oxford, and I went, into Australia, into the underground eventually, because I had to run from the Teller Group trying to put me in the grave. But there are at least two of us that I know of that have been trying to share this secret out amongst people at large without getting taken out before we could do it. So I know that people needed to see these things visually. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been generating these 3D images in a program, Strata, that I use. I suppose it'd be interesting for me to share that with you. Let me just see here. Where is Strata here? Okay, I'll grab it and bring it up. Where is Strata? Okay, just about there. Okay, here we go. And now I'm going to share that with you. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Actually see what I'm talking about. Strata's here and there. Okay. Now this is the construction I've showed you before. With this program, I can do wondrous things. I can turn it around like this. I can turn it in various angles so you can see the top and bottom of it, how the coils work. And it's been a real challenge to get these uh, coils to do what I want, because it's hard. And until you do it, you're not going to realize how hard. But here they are at right angles to each other, and they continue to be at right angles to each other in whatever position they were, on the side, on the edge, or whatever. But it is not going to be a coil, like a bunch of turns, because you can't have a lot of turns on this when you're going at 45-degree angles, to make 90 degrees between the coils. It's another difficult thing is using a single wire like this. I didn't have enough resistance, so I showed 3 wires. You can do 3, 4, 5 wires in one coil, parallel to each other, and wrap them around. And then somewhere where they come to a head, say like about or right here, you can join them together, solder them together, or whatever. And these 3 wire coils up through here, I haven't got the other 2, but you join them all together so they become one flat coil made up of little round wire ones. I know this is probably boring to some of you, but it's what we have to do to be able to actually bend the wire around and do these things here. Let me just now go to the isometric view of that, like that. We're going to expand that a bit. And, I'll just change the view here so you can see as an outline. That's how all the pieces look. So you can see an overview, see through the toroid core, how the wires are structured. It's a bit of a challenge to wind it. It's not easy, but there's no easy button for anti-gravity. You got to work a bit. Wind these coils and do that. You may actually, in the circuits that we had over in the Photoshop here, let me just get that up here. Where's the circuit? Yeah, there. Okay, in that circuit here. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop sharing that. We're going to share the Photoshop one again here. And okay, are we doing that? Is it coming up? Let me just see here. No, it's not up yet. Okay, there it is. And will get me out of the picture. Don't need me there. And so what we're seeing here in the Photoshop images is these coils where I show on here. In fact, I'll just change that here. I show a silver bar or gray bar, which is joining all these 3 coils to make them one. And I guess an argument could be made that we, instead of series connecting them so that this coil, the green coil, goes here and well, maybe this way. Uh, Here, we got it up here, that one, I think. Yeah. Um, we could make it so that all these coils are in parallel, but it wouldn't work. I don't think it might do something, but uh, it has to be in series. End of one starts the next one, end of that one starts the next one. And this diode, of course, that keeps it all running in the same direction. It's amazing. In some of the test craft that they did, the navigator was telling me about it, that the actually, I call him the navigator. The guy I'm talking about that gave me all the drawings and stuff, we now call him the accountant to give me a count of it. So the accountant was telling me about how these things are wired and um, insulated and stuff like that. And from what he told me, this is the way that we're going to build this craft. Anyway, it's just there for you to copy and do whatever you're going to do with. Let me come back to me here. Where is that here? We're going to pull that out. Put me up there. Hey, um, the the importance of this, I can't stress this enough. If you aren't a circuit type person, electronics person, electrical person, then if you have a friend that is, share this video with him so that he can do the experiment or help you to do it if you want to do it. I must caution you that once you get it working and it starts to lift up, you'll vibrate and start to lift up, um, turn off the supply then, because if you don't, it will continue to rise up like this and get up, a height above your eye height in your room. And you'll find that you go to turn it off and open the switch, the knife blade switch you use to supply the power to it. A big arc will jump out in the air between the knife blades connections, and you can't turn it off. And the only way to turn it off then is going to be to get close to 60,000 volt arc with your hand and break it free from the circuit. Well, that's not going to happen. Now, the original navigator, when he built it and that happened, he panicked because he could feel that jelly-like field underneath the raising, platform, and he realized there was a field there. So he took a broom handle, which is wood, and he swung hard underneath the craft that was floating on this, invisible field, and it brought the craft down. But it also created a huge flash as all the energy stored in over several minutes released in a brilliant burst of light. And then, of course, all the lights in the house went out. In fact, the lights in several houses on that block went out. And, the thing was down on the ground and not working anymore, which you understand. The next morning, the electric company came out and asked him if he'd had trouble. Yeah, something happened outside. He said, yeah, your pole transformer has been melted out there. And you don't know why? No, look, I was watching TV and it just, went like that. And there was a loud pop outside. Don't know what happened. Of course, he didn't want to pay the damages, and so he kind of fibbed a bit. But understand that even a small one that you're making, if it runs for a minute or two with that humming and that starting to slowly lift up, turn it off before the arc gets too big to jump across the knife blades when you open the knife blade to disconnect it from the pulsing. Just be safe. This thing can really hurt you um, and cause a fire. So I caution you, it will work, and you will have a marvelous thing to play with and to share with people. Document everything, take photos, send me drawings, send me photos of what you're doing if you want to do it. Do it at Standeyo, Standeyo, at standeyo.com. And, I will answer you. If you've got questions in your construction and testing, then I will help you with that. It's a marvelous thing. We're starting the age of electrogravitics. It's like the mechanical revolutions, that became the cotton gin, and we had mechanics and all kinds of things to automate stuff. It created a new age for mankind. Well, this is the next age, the electrogravitic age. And I hope we get to see it and use it. I'm a Christian, and I'm pretty sure that during the 7-year tribulation, we won't be able to use it. But I don't think the Christians are going to be here for that point. But whether they are or not, after the 7 year tribulation, there's going to be a 1,000 year peace reign run by Jesus Christ himself, who is the architect of the universe. And hence, electrogravitics is a common thing to him. So we may be able to use this in the rebuilding of Earth, and the communities after the tribulation and after the Armageddon War. Um, so this is important. If you have to live through the tribulation period and run from the ruling power at that time to keep from being beheaded, if you make it through that, then you will have this knowledge to contribute to the new world, the 1,000 year reign of peace. And so I think this will be of value for you to use there. Um, the the fake Messiah business, the aliens coming as our friend, is the great deception that the Bible speaks of. And so watch for it when they start to arrive here openly, and our governments are aware of that. You will see a new global government set up under the control of one man that these fallen angels or these fake aliens will set up. And in doing so, they will get rid of the deep state, get rid of the false economy that they put onto the earth. They will get rid of the Illuminati. They will get rid of all the other creatures that have been reported here, the little grays that capture people and do, painful experiments on them and stuff like that. This new group is going to be the good guys. They'll say they are. And this is the deception. Don't be fooled by it if you're here. Run from them and, keep your head down and keep your head on your shoulders, because the new ruler of this planet at that time for that 7 year period will use beheading as a punishment for people who won't bow down to him and follow the religion he sets up as a one world religion. I guess I digress a bit on that here and there, but these are things to consider. And I am now greatly relieved that I've been able to share this with you before I could no longer do so. Uh, as I said, I've been a bit ill, and it's made speaking difficult as well. So do the best you can with what I've given you, and expand the uses of it. Um, share it with people, even if they aren't electronics people. Share it with them. Tell them, mankind does have antigravity. Um, but you can also say that some of mankind, like me and the guy in Oxford, whatever, we've probably been coached by watchers from some group out there that are not of Earth, so that we would be left alone and be supplied what we need with inspiration and resources to reveal this technology to you. There's a lot more, actually, technology that goes with this, a kind of high frequency plasma cutter that will cut, 6 foot diameters, iron axles for steamships, make a polished cut right through them like that. There are ways to make a door appear in a metal hull and make it the door just appear. A line will form and the metal will be separated and it'll open and then close like you see in the movies. That technology is using these high frequency molecular beams. And you'll also be able to see how a body, can walk through a solid wall by polarizing the atoms of the body and of the wall and turning it at right angles again and slipping right on through it without touching. And you'll be on the other side having gone through a solid object, which is not really that solid, that solid. Most atoms um, are about 1,600 times apart for the diameter of the outer shell. This atom, they're about 1,600 times that distance apart. So everything we think is solid is very porous. Um, oh gosh, there's just so many things to share. Maybe I can do that if I can do another video in time. But send me your thoughts and questions, and I will help you as best I can. Um, I think that's all I've got to say in this particular video. You can join my Patreon group, Stan Deyo, in the Patreon channel. And we have at least once a month on Sunday evening from 6 to about 8, we have a chat session where we air all kinds of discoveries and ideas, concepts, and things like that. And you might find that quite interesting. We'd be face to face and live talking with each other, which is really cool. Yeah, and check Rumble and check StreamYard and check YouTube. I'll put up videos in all those places as I produce new things for you to study. It's going to be an interesting time, and well, let me just spin out. And I hope that you're a part of it and can add to what we've been talking about. So for now, I'm going to say good night, folks, and appreciate your patience. I'm a little bit disorganized these days because of the health issues and timing. So, all right. Uh, Let me just see how I sign out here. I forget these things here. Okay.